Yo, what is going on, guys? It is Colosso here. I am back with another review video. Whoa, right before the New Year's, pretty crazy. And it is going to be on another black square. It's going to be on the Odin Gaming Andromeda pad. Definitely, probably the biggest surprise pad that I guess I've had the pleasure of reviewing. The reason I feel like this pad is so surprising to me at the very least is it made me realize that I care way more about the surface than I do the overall quality of a pad. Right before I talk about the quality of the pad, I want to talk about how it came shipped. It came shipped very nicely in a nice box, although it is rolled way too tightly. When you look into the box, it kind of looks like there's a square in there rather than a rolled up circle pad. It's rolled so tightly that there are waves in the pad, and I have owned a Zero Gravity and an Infinity, and those pads are honestly the exact same. When you take them both out of the box, it does also have those similar waves to my Andromeda did. So what I did to counteract that is I just laid a ton of pads on top of this, and I left it there for about 3 days ish, and then I just started using it again. And now that there's no issues in the surface, I'm actually able to appreciate it much more than when I first received it. In terms of the overall quality, you can kind of see that the stitching is raised above the surface by quite a bit, in all honesty. And that's the biggest downside to the stitching. While I feel like there are no nicks in the stitching itself, having the stitching raised above the surface, I feel like is getting pretty unacceptable, in all honesty. I feel like there's tons of pads, even budget pads, that are now having at the very least level to the surface. So I do feel like if they could just iron out these small little quality issues, this pad would be such an easy recommendation for me. Although the nice thing about it is it is so plushy that I actually don't notice it when moving my arm up and down for vertical movements. So that is a genuine plus. I think that's the only thing I care about for stitching is I just like it to be very soft to the touch, which it is, so I can press into it if I wanted to. Another thing is the softness, speaking of pressing into. The main thing with this is it feels like an artisan soft. I don't feel like I can actually apply enough pressure to sink into the pad. If I apply a lot of pressure, I'm able to get just a little bit more stopping power, but not as much as I would be able to if I was pressing into it on an X soft pad. The biggest downfall for this kind of softness is I do feel like this pad is quite thin. If it was 4 millimeters and just a tad bit softer, it would be amazing, which I think is what they're going for in their next pad. Another thing too is this generic base. It is used on tons of budget pads and it performs fine. I've never had an issue with this kind of base moving anywhere on my desk. I don't know if people put Vaseline to where this is a problem for them, but this base has always worked perfectly fine for me. I don't see a point in using a better one, although if they can use a better one, then by all means. I know that the base does affect the surface itself. Finally, talking about the surface, I feel like it has a lot of similarities to a GSRC Rouge, not with how soft it feels. The surface itself, just by touch, it feels more like a Saturn Pro type of surface, but it doesn't perform quite the same. What I mean by comparing it to the GSRC Rouge is the initial friction is so incredibly light, there's almost none. The dynamic friction is absolutely amazing, and there is still enough stopping power for it to be called a control pad, although the only thing is there is less stopping power on this pad than there is on the GSRC Rouge. And that is what brings me to liking the GSRC Rouge more than this pad. It really is just that little bit extra of stopping power that the Rouge has over this pad. But the biggest thing is I just love how effortlessly you can move this mouse around on this pad. You can move so freely on this pad because the initial friction and dynamic glide is so light and effortless that it makes it a serious contender for tons of games. I really respect companies that are able to make a pad that I could recommend for Valorant and Overwatch, just because precision and track-based games are so incredibly different. You would typically never use a very slow muddy pad on Overwatch, as vice versa you would never use something like a sky pad on CS. So having this kind of versatile surface makes it so easy to recommend, and I really do think that Odin is doing really good things, especially with their new surfaces, because their Infinity and now their Andromeda, both of these surfaces are so nice to use. The Andromeda is honestly to me a bit more unique than the Infinity is, but both are still very nice to use. I also do want to talk about why I care more about the surface than the quality itself. I don't think I really care if the stitched edging is lower than the surface, if the pad is X soft and has a pour-on base. I genuinely don't care about any of that if the surface of the pad is great. And what made me realize that is sadly the Infinity Mice Dual. I could never get that surface to work for me personally, so I could never really enjoy that pad as much as I do the Andromeda. While the Andromeda is obviously much lower in overall quality, the Surface is so nice for me to use that I just don't care about the quality. Although that is completely different from mice. If mice have terrible build quality or terrible main clicks, I usually never ever want to use that mouse, even if the shape is incredible. That's kind of why my ranking for mice at the very least go from weight, build quality, and then shape. It's super, super bizarre. I just feel like for myself, shape is not king. But yeah, that's pretty much all for my review. I did have a lot of fun using this pad, and I am very thankful for Odin for also sending it out as well. Use code Colosso at checkout if you're a huge gaming chad that squats 4 plates. But yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful, happy new year, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.